Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dan on Sports. Well, here we go. The NFL draft all set to take place from Thursday, April the 24th, through Saturday, April the 26th in Green Bay, Wisconsin, as the NFL now moves the venues around for the draft. Because why? Because they can. Because why? Because it means more money for the NFL. Listen, I am old enough to remember when the NFL would conduct the draft starting in the morning in a New York hotel on a weekday. And I'd have to find out who the Giants picked through my high school teacher, who was a big New York Giants fan. And then my high school teacher would find out by calling down to a corner store where the owner of the store, who's a dear friend of mine, would find out by listening to the news radio. Man, have times changed. But I digress. This is going to be a big deal. It's going to be televised everywhere. And I'm going to link in the notes where you can watch the draft. It's going to be on the NFL Network. ESPN's going to have it. ABC's going to have it. Just about every station around. And it's a big deal. So, who's going to be the number one overall pick? That's the big question. I know that there are a lot of people who are weighing in on this. I've done some studying. These are not my predictions. I'm just giving you what the consensus seems to be. And Tennessee has the overall number one pick. And right now the consensus is Tennessee is going to draft quarterback Cam Ward out of Miami. The Titans need a quarterback. Will Levis has not worked out. I feel badly for this because I broadcast Will Levis games when he was in high school. He went to Xavier High School in Middletown and then went to Penn State, transferred to Kentucky. But I broadcast Will's high school football games and really enjoyed broadcasting those games. In fact, I put up one of those broadcasts on one of my channels. And to make it to the NFL, well, to make it to be a college quarterback, to make it to be a Division I quarterback is really something, and Will Levis made it and ended up starting for an NFL team. It hasn't quite worked out for Will in Tennessee, and now I'm reading all these stories that he could be traded before the draft actually begins on the 24th, Thursday. I'm reading that Kirk Cousins could be traded. There could be a lot of activity. So far, as of this recording, no team has traded its number one pick. No team. That hasn't happened since 2002. Now, that might change, but it has not changed as of the moment. So right now, the consensus is that Cam Ward is going to be drafted by Tennessee. You would think anyway. Which brings us to the number two pick. The Cleveland Browns have the number two pick, and that's Travis Hunter. He's a cornerback with Colorado, played for Coach Deion Sanders. He also is a two-way player, and he is insisting, by the way, that whichever team drafts him is going to have to play him on defense and on offense. He is an extraordinary athlete. I don't think there's any denying that. And right now, unless the Browns change their minds, it looks as if Travis Hunter is going to Cleveland. We'll find out on Thursday. By the way, just the first round is going to take place on Thursday. And then I believe it's rounds 2 and 3 on Friday and the remaining rounds through 7 on Saturday. Which brings us to the always intriguing New York Giants, who, in many respects, are in a pretty good position. Although we've been hearing that this is going to be an important draft for the Giants as far as drafting a quarterback. That the co-owner of the Giants, John Mara, has insisted that the Giants draft their quarterback of the future in this draft. The only problem is there really are not many outstanding quarterbacks this year. The outstanding quarterbacks are going to be next year. But in order for the Giants to be in that position, they'd have to have another horrible season. And John Mara does not want his team to have another horrible season. He wants his team to play games that matter on Sunday or whenever. He doesn't like the fact that the fifth broadcast crew of a network is doing Giants games. He wants to be in the conversation come December. Well, recently he's been in the conversation. His team has been in the conversation in December, but it's all bad. But arguably, And from all I've read, from what I've seen, the best player in the draft, the overall best player in the draft is Abdul Carter, who plays edge, Penn State, outstanding player. And the consensus seems to be that the Giants will draft Abdul Carter. Now, I read a story before we prepared this recording that the Giants tried desperately to make a deal with Tennessee to get the number 1 pick, which tells me they were still trying to get Cam Ward, that they wouldn't be struggling to get the number 1 pick overall for Sanders, that they wanted Cam Ward. That's what it tells me, but we'll see. All I know is that if the Giants don't draft Carter, I would be very, very surprised because from all accounts, what I've read is overall, he's the best player in the draft. Plus, they've handled the quarterback situation for the time being with Russell Wilson and Winston, Jameis Winston. So, what does that mean as far as the Giants quarterback of the future? It means it's very possible they could get that quarterback of the future lower in the first round if they trade their second-round pick. Remember, they trade third in the second round, which is still a high pick. They might package that with another pick to draft lower in the first round to get their quarterback. But right now, that seems to be where the Giants are headed, Abdul Carter, which brings us to the New England Patriots, the once glorified New England Patriots, now under Coach Mike Vrabel. And from what I've been reading, they are going to go with Will Campbell, offensive tackle, LSU. They need to get their quarterback protection. And so Campbell seems to be the one. Will Campbell, LSU, outstanding tackle. You've got to protect the quarterback, and it appears that in this case, that's who the Patriots are going to pick. That's the consensus anyway, and all of this is just consensus. So who is picking 5? And I'm just going to give you the top 5 picks. That's all I'm doing. Picking 5, Jacksonville. I've read a couple of stories that Jacksonville is either going to draft Mason Graham, the defensive lineman from Michigan, or they might go with the wideout from Arizona, T-Mac. But, defense wins championships. I know Jacksonville has, I believe, a very good quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. He's been hurt, but Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback, and Trevor Lawrence is still going to be a force with the Jags. But you win games with your offense. You win championships with your defense. You can get a tight end or a wide receiver or that position lower in the draft. But if you've got somebody who has the ability as a Mason Graham, defensive lineman, plays for an outstanding program, college program, Michigan, played under a very good coaching staff, then, Martindale, who I thought was an excellent defensive coordinator with the Ravens, with the Giants. Martindale got into issues with Daboll, and the next thing you know, he's the DC of Michigan. But I think that's who Jacksonville's going to go with. Let's round out the remaining top 10 teams. You've got the LV Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders will pick next, followed by the New York Jets. Then you've got the Panthers, the Saints, and the Bengals. And I'll post the rest in the notes as to the order of the draft, the breakout, where it's going to be televised, all of that you'll be able to read if you go to my newsletter, danonsports.com. All of that will be posted on danonsports.com. But here we are. The NFL draft is upon us. This has become such a big deal. And think about this for just a moment. This is one of the top-rated programs on television. We're not even talking about a game. This draft will outrate the World Series, the NBA Finals, the NHL. Just to once again remind you that the NFL and football, because you've got to include college football in this. Football's the number one sport in the nation. I'm not disparaging the other sports. Listen, I broadcast baseball games, broadcast basketball games too. I love it. I love baseball. But you've got the draft of a player. And again, remember, I'm old enough to remember the days when this was held in a New York hotel room on a weekday morning, I think starting at 10 o'clock. And you'd have to listen to the all-news radio station, which was relatively new. All-news radio stations were just coming into being. In New York had a couple of them, and you had to listen to those stations to find out when the sports report came along who was selected in the draft. And now it's an instantaneous. Social media runs crazy with it. And, of course, it's going to be on myriad television stations and other internet channels. It's wild. It's wild. Enjoy the draft. The next 3 days are going to be fascinating, but particularly Thursday. That first day of the draft is really exciting. That's going to do it for Dan on Sports. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And be sure to subscribe. We are in podcast directories, but also subscribe to my newsletter, which includes these podcasts and videos at danonsports.com.